Nature and biodiversity laws present serious risks to financial stability, driven by factors like climate change, land use change, pollution, invasive species, and overexploitation of natural resources. These drivers disrupt vital ecosystem services like water availability and soil health. For example, land degradation lowers water retention and crop yields, which directly impacts economic activity. For financial institutions, these risks appear through four main channels: credit risk, as degraded ecosystems reduce client revenues and weaken collateral; market risk, when nature related exposures are underpriced or affected by sudden policies, like the EU fertilizer cut; liquidity risk, as rainfall disruptions impact commodity flows; and operational risk, when ecosystem stress lowers productivity or affects worker health. Sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and utilities are especially exposed. In agriculture, soil loss and drought can lead to stranded assets, reduced output, and financial losses across all risk categories. This slide outlines our methodology for assessing nature-related risk. While it builds on TNFD's LEAP framework, we've adapted it to better reflect how financial institutions operate in practice. A key improvement is the addition of the established step. Some institutions used LEAP in case studies found that starting with locate was impractical, since asset-level data isn't always available. So we begin with a top-down approach, screening by sector, geography, and nature dependencies to flag high-risk areas. On the right, we start with where is the risk, classifying exposures using GICS, then applying Encore heat maps to identify high-risk sectors and regions. How much risk is there? You use MSCI asset tagging to assess magnitude, tailoring the level of detail to your assessment goes from processes to product and physical asset locations. And lastly, what is the financial implication? Starting with a top-down scenario analysis and, where possible, refine using bottom-up counterparty data. This slide shows how we've improved risk quantification by enhancing Encore's heat map approach. A key limitation of Encore is that it only reflects direct sector-level dependencies, ignoring upstream and downstream impacts. For example, the F&B sector may appear low risk, even though it relies heavily on upstream agriculture, where deforestation or land degradation poses real threats. It also lacks a forward-looking analysis, capturing only current risks. To address this, we've introduced three key components. First, a value chain exposure score to capture upstream and downstream dependencies to surface hidden risks across the value chain. Second, we've accounted for short, medium, and long-term horizons by including risk probability and severity to capture both transition and physical risks not reflected in static sector-level data. And third, we included a biodiversity value at risk metric to quantify potential financial loss and support better decision making. Together, these changes offer a more complete and forward-looking risk picture for financial institutions.
Financial institutions need a robust risk monitoring system to effectively manage natural and biodiversity risks. To monitor them, we use KRS. For example, water consumption detected through IoT sensors and blockchain identifies high-risk industry. ESG rating and change trends track companies whose sustainability performance declines due to environmental violations. Natural risk-related financial losses measure the financial impact of natural disasters or regulatory penalties on banks' portfolios. Additionally, in-core heat maps help prioritize KRI tracking. Sectors flagged as high risk in-core should receive priority in monitoring. AWS classifies risks as low, medium, or high. Low risk needs routine monitoring. Medium risk prompts internal review and possible portfolio adjustment. High risk, triggered when thresholds are breached, requires immediate action. To ensure accurate classification, thresholds are adjusted dynamically using industry benchmarking, scenario analysis, and stress testing. Benchmarking aligns performance with sustainability standards. Scenario analysis based on IPCC and TNFD projections anticipates future risks and informs threshold updates. Stress testing stimulates extreme events to assess resilience. EWS uses advanced technologies to improve monitoring, automate responses, and support decisions. AI and machine learning detect earlier environmental risks. GIS and SRS offer real-time tracking. IoT sensors and blockchain enhance supply chain transparency and detect greenwashing. An automated platform integrates these tools, enabling AI-driven strategy adjustment, funding restrictions, and real-time alerts.
Risk mitigation can be carried out in three possible ways. Firstly, there's proactive risk mitigation, which involves sustainable finance policies that promote green or biodiversity linked bonds with performance based incentives to decrease credit risk. Then there is sectoral restrictions which limit investments in high-impact sectors to decrease market and reputational risk. Additionally, there is engagement and exclusion which encourages companies on biodiversity risks and divest from non-compliant entities to decrease operational and reputational risk. Additionally, environmental risk insurance and hedging involves ecosystem valuation, which incorporates ecosystem services into risk pricing and underwriting, as well as hedging, which offsets biodiversity risk through derivatives and portfolio diversification, and parametric insurance, which covers biodiversity related losses via event triggered payouts. This decreases credit, market, and liquidity risks. Lastly, aligning financial portfolios with biodiversity goals involve the adoption of TNFD disclosure requirements. This means aligning financial decision-making with the TNFD framework to decrease operational and regulatory risks, as well as the implementation of ESG frameworks to decrease credit and market risks. Lastly, biodiversity footprint assessment allows for long-term market risk to be decreased as it allows for assessment of biodiversity footprints of investment portfolios.
Let me walk you through the key aspects of reporting and regulatory compliance for nature-related financial risk. The framework begins with risk identification, where firms classify physical and transition risk and assess financial dependencies on nature. Next is risk integration, using tools like biodiversity stress tests and air-driven geospatial monitoring. The third pillar is disclosure and transparency. Firms align with frameworks like TNFD, SFTR to report meaningful KPIs such as biodiversity footprint and water usage, building investor confidence. This aligns globally with regulations like the EU SFDR, SEC Climate Risk Disclosure, TNFD, and the International Sustainability Standards Board, each emphasizing sustainability risk and target. Internally, strong governance is essential. This includes board-level sustainability committees, stress testing for nature laws, leveraging Earth data technologies, and integrating ESG frameworks to manage financial risk similar to nature risk.
BNP Paribas France has implemented a comprehensive biodiversity risk framework built around 6 key components. It begins with identifying high-risk areas like deforestation and ecosystem degradation, particularly in sectors like agriculture and mining. They conduct scenario analysis using TNFD-aligned stress tests and integrate biodiversity risk into credit decisions, restricting financing for harmful activities such as illegal logging. Their governance aligns with major frameworks like the UE Green Deal and UN biodiversity goals. They use satellite monitoring and ESG data to track land use changes and assess portfolio exposures. Reporting is aligned with TNFD, SFDR, and other sustainability standards, ensuring transparency. Among their strengths are strong alignment with global frameworks, transparent reporting, and client-focused financing. However, they still face challenges such as accurately quantifying biodiversity risk and inconsistent application across regions.
DBS integrates biodiversity risk into the ESG strategies, focusing on high-impact sectors such as palm oil, agriculture, and marine industries. However, biodiversity considerations are limited, with no dedicated stress testing or TNFD-aligned scenarios. For risk management, DBS encourages sustainability certifications such as RSPO and FSC, and has exclusion policies for activities such as illegal deforestation and IUU fishing. Governance allies with the Asian Taxonomy and the Mass Green Finance Action Plan. DBS uses ESG data from providers such as Global Forest Watch with geospatial tracking for deforestation. However, real-time biodiversity tracking is limited compared to peers such as BNP Paribas. Its reporting follows GRI, SASB, and TCFD, but lacks TNFD adoption. DBS strengths include expertise in Southeast Asia, green and blue bonds. Challenges include limited biodiversity frameworks, weak transparency, and reliance on third-party data, instead of proprietary biodiversity risk tracking.
To conclude, BNP Paribas demonstrates a solid and forward-looking approach to biodiversity risk. It stands out for its early adoption of TNFD, integration of biodiversity into credit assessments, and use of geospatial data and ESG analytics. However, challenges remain, particularly in risk quantification, internal data capacity, and global implementation consistency. In contrast, DBS focuses on Southeast Asia's ecosystems and shows strong regional expertise and innovative finance tools. Yet, it lacks TNFD alignment, biodiversity-specific metrics, and relies heavily on third-party data without property tracking tools. Overall, BNP is effective but not yet transformative. It needs to develop in-house tools and innovative further. DBS is a regional leader but needs expansion, aligning with the global standards, improving disclosures, and enhancing its biodiversity risk framework. Strengthening these areas will be key for both institutions to lead in sustainable finance.